Spring in Peking, a sight that until a few weeks ago, not many Westerners were likely to feel had much to do with them. You can still count the passing cars in dozens instead of thousands, and the only traffic jams are those caused by people. The only writing on the wall is Mao Zedong's. But suddenly, this spring of all springs, there's something new. The latest thought of Chairman Mao that they're erecting 50 feet high in the Great Square says, unite to win still greater victories. But somewhere, written small as yet perhaps, but still there, is the message that's gone out across China, that after 5 years of private turmoil, the nation's door is to open, at least a crack, to an ever-fascinated outside world. As the grandstands are got ready for the celebration of May Day in the capital, Peking has been entertaining perhaps the unlikeliest assembly of foreign ambassadors diplomacy has ever seen. Britain's latest emissaries to China have been half a dozen youthful ping-pong players who in the last 2 weeks they've toured the country have had more attention and more friendliness from the Chinese than most diplomats see in their lives. Since they first arrived in China, the English table tennis team have been feted and cheered every yard of their progress. The Chinese smiles and laughter haven't faltered for a moment. From Peking to Shanghai and Shanghai to Tientsin, they've been led on tours, taken on visits, invited to meet every kind of national and local dignitary. They've been swept along on a tide of ping-ponging goodwill. China seems to have picked her moment to emerge from the long series of internal upheavals that followed the Cultural Revolution and show the world at least something of herself now she's been tidied up to her own satisfaction. Foreigners, any foreigners, are a curiosity that nobody in Peking's Square of the Heavenly Peace has had time to get bored with yet. Maybe it's because they think we're all ping-pong players. But every visiting team in the last few weeks here has taken its ritual walk through the square, and they've all received many times this kind of fascinated attention. Foreigners who live here say that even in the last few months, there's been a marked relaxing of attitude in the streets just to the sight of. The massive publicity that's been given to the ping-pong players within China as well as abroad has quickened the process. This time, the English team are visiting Peking Zoo, escorted by a group of Chinese table tennis stars. Everybody is in holiday mood, and perhaps it's part of the charm of the whole exercise that everybody seems to behave in Peking much as they might on a week on the Costa Brava.
Fantastic. Look at that. Look, he's showing himself off, too. Look.
Mate, why didn't you put that on?
God.
Come round.
Come on. Come on.
Beautiful, isn't it? We did our best, and we've enjoyed every minute of it. And it's an unusual position to be in, actually, you know, to play table tennis and suddenly to be thrown into this sort of scene here. But we've enjoyed every moment we've stayed in China.
English. Panther.
Even with a language barrier, everybody finds something to say when confronted with animals. Or rather, the English look at the animals and the Chinese look at the English. Mr. Charles Wiley, the English team manager, is a retired grocer from Hastings who might have been hand-picked for the role he's playing. Mr. Wiley's brand of good cheer and chatty friendliness is the simplest insurance policy you could have against any awkward silences. And above all, he looks delighted about everything.
Well, I suppose, like all people who've come into a country which was a little unknown, to walk across, I know I felt, and the others felt the same, when we walked across that now famous railway bridge between Hong Kong and China. We wondered what was in front of us. But really, it wasn't long. I felt, as soon as we got to Canton after the railway, when we had the wonderful cymbals band and literally hundreds of people meeting us and table tennis people, we knew then.
What was it like arriving in Peking?
Oh, well, I shall never forget coming in. Don't forget, they put a special for us from Canton to Peking, and looking out the plane window and then seeing hundreds of photographers and press people, television people and lights. I was very fearful of going down those steps until one of the Chinese officials that came.
Have you ever been anywhere where there's so much enthusiasm?
Never. I wish we had it in England.
Tonight is the British table tennis team's last match in China. On the 5 they've played so far, they're 4-1 up. And for tonight, the final one, here in the People's Gymnasium in Peking, they've got an audience of 20,000. That's how big ping pong is in China. Every match the team has played has been attended with the sort of pomp and circumstance we'd be cautious about including into a cup final. But this, above all, is one pleasure the Chinese take seriously with or without foreign visitors. They've been very impressed with the English team, who perform better than any of their other recent foreign competitors. The English, who at home aren't exactly household names in our own less ping-pong conscious society, are delighted to find at last a really appreciative audience. They rise to this occasion as well as they have to every other on the tour. They're beaten, but honourably. The farewell ceremony here also marks the beginning of the end of their trip. It's been one of the strangest episodes, even in all the bizarre history of China's relations with the West. It's all stemmed from an act of policy by the Chinese to test the temperature outside. And everybody's hoping they'll be pleased by the enthusiasm with which it's been received. The issue of Formosa, the struggle with the Americans in Indochina, the great clash of ideologies across the world won't just suddenly lie down and die because of what's happened here. There's no suggestion of China proposing any change of political doctrine. But it's an indication that there may still, beyond this, be things to talk about.
During the period of the Cultural Revolution, which was a big internal movement in China with certain political aims, they were too preoccupied domestically to want to venture much into affairs. This has now more or less come to an end. The Chinese are interested in stepping out diplomatically. They're probably also interested in membership of the United Nations and in generally developing their relations with as many countries as possible. So I think that they have chosen, probably deliberately, a sporting occasion to start it with.
While the world was still speculating, sometimes highly exotically, about all this ping-pong, the English team was looking at giant pandas. It might just be that Mr. Wiley's idea of things to negotiate about may coincide more closely with that of the Chinese than Mr. Nixon's.
Now, we've only got one panda in England, and we very much want to breed. from another panda, and we borrowed a panda from Russia, but it wasn't very successful. You know, it would be a wonderful thing if the Chinese people and the Chinese Sioux were able to send a panda, a male panda, a young male panda to England, so that we could breed, and there'd be little pandas. We would then have pandas, you know, English and Chinese pandas to remember the friendship for many, many years. Oh, they were curious. Without a doubt, you know, they wondered, you know, they hadn't seen many Europeans, particularly in a town like Tianjin. Shanghai, I think they'd seen more. And we were told by the mission, there was only, when we first arrived, there was only 47 English people in the whole of China, and they included the peoples of the mission. Therefore, they were naturally curious, and they wanted to see us.
Pauline, what are the impressions that you bring back with you?
Well, my impressions are that the life that they have there isn't the sort of life I'd like, but for them, it seems ideal, you know, very happy.
How did they react to a girl in a miniskirt walking about?
Well, they were very curious, you know, we had a lot of people around us all the time. But, yeah, the girls, they don't wear skirts, at least not while we were there. They look very much like the men, in fact, you know, sort of boiler suit type thing.
Boiler suit.
We call them boiler suits.
What was it like playing in front of such enormous crowds?
Very nerve-wracking at first, you know, we'd never seen so many people before. In the first match, I think it was over 20,000. It was a huge stadium. It was quite nerve-wracking, I think.
Alan, what surprised you most about the visit?
I think how the people appeared so happy, you know, with their lives. They seem quite content to accept what they have, and they seem determined to develop the country as quick as possible. And they're very, very keen to learn about the technical things and improve every aspect of life in China. And they'll succeed with what we saw.
Did they react to you with your long hair and rather individual style of dress?
I think they were curious or amused. And they'd never seen anything like this.
I'm not surprised.
And I think they were quite, you know, willing to accept me as I was willing to accept them. And they learned a little from me as I learned much from them.
In the past year, I can say that relations between Britain and China have very greatly improved, and we have every confidence that we'll continue to do so.
Could you give some specific examples, for example, in the field of trade?
A good one, I think, is the visit to Peking of Mr. John Keswick, Sino-British Trade Council, who has been at the Canton Fair and is coming up here shortly. He will be having contact with Chinese officials. His visit will lead to an expansion in many directions.
We've been reading about the visit of the British table tennis team to Peking. Has this improved relations?
It undoubtedly has. The team have been given a very warm reception by their Chinese hosts. They've played a number of friendly matches in Peking, Shanghai, and elsewhere. And I think it's of the relations that they should have had such a very good reception by the Chinese. We hope that there will be many more such contacts in the future.